What did Julie say? Those words? "O my soul, do not doubt, for I see the Lion of the tribe of Judah on the throne." That's quite fitting, really, for what I want to talk about this morning. So, a little while ago, a few of us drove up to Leeds for a day looking at the book of Revelation. A bit of a deeper dive into the book of Revelation. So I want to mention some of that. Now, having said all of that, so much could be said, couldn't it? There are concepts in Revelation, there are images in Revelation that are going to be unfamiliar to us. Yeah, there's beings on horses, there's locusts, there's angels, there's beasts, there's dragons, there's bowls, there's seals, there's stars falling. It's like a massive fantasy novel. You know, and we had a few hours up in Leeds, and I've got 30 minutes. 29 minutes now, yeah. We hear comments, don't we? "Oh, I don't understand that. I don't read it. I don't find that helpful, Revelation." None of those are uncommon responses, are they? So what I want to do today is make us all, no, I don't want to make us all experts in Revelation. I just want to hopefully arouse a little bit of curiosity. If I can do that today, then I think that's good. I'm pleased with that. So here's the first question for you. How much do you understand the Old Testament? You don't have to answer that. See, there are some that say quite flatly that the Old Testament is irrelevant today. There are some, I'm talking about Christians, there are some say the Old Testament is of no importance and that all we need is the New Testament. Let me show you something. Yeah. Now, what you've got down the left-hand side, don't worry, you might be able to see much of it, is different things that happen in the book of Revelation. On the right-hand side, as you scroll down, you've got from Genesis through to Haggai, you've got the Old Testament. And the lines show where things mentioned in Revelation are also mentioned in the Old Testament. That took weeks to put together. By somebody, yeah. Yes, yeah. So that's just an illustration. Don't worry that you can't read it. The point is, the more we know and understand the Old Testament, the more we will understand Revelation. Because a lot of it's there. Some of the stories are reworked, some of them were, reworded. Thanks, Jill. Some are repeated. So I'm going to be using a little bit this morning from David Pawson in his introduction to Revelation, which is, I think, pretty good. So I'm not going to focus a lot on the text of Revelation because it's just too much. And we'd have too much debate, which is a brilliant thing to have. I just want to focus a bit, maybe on the why. Why is it so important? Why do we need to understand it more? So let's start, as David Pawson puts very nicely, let's think about some opinions on the book of Revelation. So there's a wide range of opinions, and they go sort of fearful to fanatical. I'm sure we've all mixed with people through our Christian walk that have been either fearful or fanatical about Revelation. And some wouldn't have a clue. So I'm going to simplify this and look at and consider three opinions. Firstly, the world. What is the human opinion of Revelation? The human opinion, the world's opinion. Well, I would suggest if you're not a believer, you won't have a clue. It will be a big mystery. It might just be a big fantasy novel. What about if you're a believer? Here's something that David Pawson highlighted, which made me sort of sit up and think, really. Some of the big name Protestant reformers, Calvin, Luther, Zwingli, they didn't have much good to say about Revelation at all. In fact, they were quite dismissive. So what does that mean? Well, this is where I think the rubber hits the road, because if people like those downgraded Revelation, and many denominations today have come up through the Reformation, why is it not surprising that a lot of the church doesn't talk about Revelation, doesn't consider it important? What's your background and my background? So that's the world opinion and some big Protestant reformers' opinions. What about satanic opinion? Oh, I love this. See, Genesis reveals how Satan gained control of the planet. Revelation shows how he will lose it. But you see, if Satan can convince us as believers that Revelation is full of impenetrable mysteries, he's won a little battle, hasn't he? Because we won't bother looking at it, we won't bother reading it, because we think, oh, it's too big, it's too complicated, it's too mystical, I can never understand that. And he can keep us from that. So what about divine opinion? Well, it might be a bit biased, mightn't it, divine opinion? But it's consistently positive. In fact, it's the only book to contain divine sanctions of reward and punishment. There's a special blessing in Revelation on those who read it aloud and who keep the words, and a special curse on those who tamper with the text. So it's such a blessing and such a curse tells us how seriously God regards the facts and the truths in the book of Revelation. Let's think about the book itself. So its position in the Bible. Genesis had to be at the beginning. Yeah? If Genesis was halfway through, you wouldn't know where you were, would you? Genesis had to be at the beginning. Revelation can be nowhere else but at the end. In so many ways, it's completing the story. It's putting all the threads together. You saw a lot of the threads through the Old Testament, and they're revealed and pulled together in Revelation. See, the biblical accounts of the origin and destiny of our universe can be shown to be the best explanation of its present state. If we know how it all started and how it all ended, we can use that knowledge to better fathom out where we are now. To know how it will end is of profound significance to the way we live now. So, again, where are we maybe in God's prophetic calendar? See, if we don't know where we are, the events that lie ahead will ambush us. The Bible's quite clear on that. The events will ambush us, bring in unnecessary fear and confusion. The Bible tells us that as well. We'll be imprisoned in the confusion of the coming crisis. We've been through some crises over the last years, haven't we? And there has been confusion. We've seen governments really not knowing what to do. We've seen the church not knowing what to do. So if we don't know how it will end, and it will end, how do we know that we're rightly positioned now and today? See, the interest of the Bible is in the human race and in God's chosen people in particular. With them, he has a covenant relationship. We know it started with Israel. We are now part of that covenant that God made with Israel right at the beginning. And God describes that covenant relationship, doesn't he, as a marriage. A romance between a heavenly father seeking an earthly bride for his son. I really like that. Just the picture of a heavenly father seeking an earthly bride for his son. And we know the story. They get married and they live happily ever after. They do, don't we? But this climax is only reached in the book of Revelation. Without it, we won't know. We wouldn't know. If you don't read Revelation, you will not know how it ends. You might be left thinking the book of Acts is the ends, or Jude is the ends. So Revelation is different from the other New Testament books in both content and origin. The other books were purposefully written, with consideration given to what would be written before it was written. And a lot of those books, aren't they, are after the event. If you're telling the story of what Jesus did and said, they're written after the event. So consideration was given to how to write it, who's it going to be written to, and such like. See, John never intended to write Revelation. He didn't even think about it. It unexpectedly came to him in visual and verbal form, voices and visions, and he was told to write down what he saw and he heard. Just didn't think about it in advance. So John wasn't really the author, was he? The message was communicated to him by angels, by what the Spirit was saying to the churches, and it was the revelation of Jesus Christ, but it was given to Jesus by God. You need to look at the beginning of Revelation to follow that thread. It was given to Jesus by God to be given onward to the churches. So dealing with a myth that we all, Revelation, apocalypse is the word, isn't it? Apocalypsis doesn't mean the end of the world that so many people think it means. It doesn't mean the end of the world. It means the revelation of Jesus Christ. That's the full title of the book, the revelation of Jesus Christ. So it's the apocalypse of Jesus Christ. It's an unveiling. It's God pulling back the curtain, opening up and breaking through of Jesus Christ. God's pulling back the curtain to reveal something to us as we read through the book. And when God unveils something to us, we can't be the same. Once we know, we can't be the same as before we knew. It's not there to frighten us, because it should be giving us hope. Blessed is he who reads and those who hear the words of this prophecy. See, really, Revelation was written to be read aloud. Blessed is he who keeps the words of the prophecy of this book. Keeps, talking about guarding from loss, keeping our eye on. We keep a focus on the words in the book. If you've not read it, we can't do that. And we know, don't we, Jesus has already won. We've been singing it this morning. Yeah? That prophetic word. Jesus already won. Jesus has already overcome. So things around us at the moment are not quite as they seem. Book of Revelation really seeks to do two things. Firstly, it seeks to set the present in light of the unseen realities of the future. Set the present in the unseen, in the light of unseen realities of the future. See, if we know what the future holds, or part of what the future holds, it determines the choices we make in the present. If we don't know where it's all going, we won't know what choices we're making. And the second thing is it seeks to set the present in the light of the unseen realities of the present, because the present is not all it seems. It is a prophecy, but it's similar in style to the Old Testament prophets. And that might suggest there's a large quantity in the book of Revelation which is about the present rather than the future. It reveals a divine perspective on our current reality. What is God saying about the time in which we live? Because things are not quite as they seem. It emphasizes the present reality of God. Revelation 1, verses 4 and 5 says, "Grace to you and peace to him, peace from him who is and who was and who is to come." Normally when we hear that, we say from him who was, who is, and is to come. This changes that. Who is, who was, and who is to come. Present reality. It was a letter, wasn't it, written to a group of churches in Asia. Real people, real place, in a real time. Real life situations and real life circumstances. So it certainly had a present connection with the audience at the time. And we need to hear those words today. 22:10 says, "And he said unto me, seal not the sayings of the prophecy in this book, for the time is at hand." Whereas before that chapter 22, in chapter 10, he was told not to write down what he saw. So even through the book, more is revealed through the book. It reminds us that our present difficulties have a connection to the future, and a future that is firmly in God's hands. See, when you go to an optician, things look blurry till they put the right lens in front of you. Then you can start to focus. Revelation gives us some of that focus, that we can see things through that lens and we look on the present time differently. There's more to reality than meets the unaided eyes or ears. And it helps us to see Jesus relative to the powers that are at work today. We know there are powers and principalities at work today. This helps put it into focus. We could talk about the spirit of the age, the world system, the power of advertising and all the stuff that the enemy bombards us with, that appeals to our desires, that attracts and shapes our preferences, that controls our behaviour, that robs us of our identity. We've not got to look very far, have we, to see some of those things happening. And in some ways, you might think the enemy is winning on some counts. And it says, doesn't it, for all these things must come to pass. They must come to pass. Well, why is that? Why must they come to pass? Two things to think about that hopefully will give us hope. There's a lot more, but just two to think about. The first helps us to know the why these things must come to pass. And that's simply, the first point is that Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. 1:7 says, behold, he is coming with clouds. 22:7 says, behold, I am coming quickly. 22:12 says, and behold, I am coming quickly. See, he will come applies that at the present, Jesus has gone to get a coffee or something, who's having a bit of a sandwich, waiting for the day when he will come. Because it doesn't say he will come, it says he's coming. That's in the present tense. He is coming implies that Jesus is already moving towards us. And he's been moving for 2,000 odd years. And that coming explains of the upheavals in history that we see, doesn't it? It explains why all these things must come to pass, and it explains the escalation in those things as the days go past. Says of the enemy, he's filled with fury because he knows that his time is short. So Jesus' coming is being resisted, and it's resulting in the upheavals that we see around us. The earth is under transition as Satan works to unify the earth in sinful defiance of God. Nothing's changed there, is it? It's just doing it in a different way. So it's not a sign of Jesus' absence, but his presence. So we need not fear. So the first point is Jesus is coming. The second point is, where is he at the moment? If he's coming, where is Jesus currently? 1:12 and 13 says, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man. We know because it tells us that the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. And we know, and it says, in the midst of means he's not looking from a distance. So today, Jesus is amongst his church. He's walking amongst his church today. That's quite comforting to know. At times you think the church needs to realise that a little bit more, but it's still quite comforting to know. So just in bringing this sort of to a bit of a conclusion, catching hold of the book will, I suggest, help us to maintain the hope that we need to maintain in these days. See, 40 times in the book, John says, I saw. 32 times, he says, I heard. So the primary exhortation of Revelation is not to trust and obey like a lot of the other books, it's to listen and to look. If we find it hard trusting Jesus, maybe we're just not listening or we're not looking at the things John heard and John saw. 19 times we are told to look, and it might be a phrase like lo or behold. Now that is a command, because he knows God knows that if we can see the full reality of the present, we'll have courage to overcome the powers of this age and to follow Jesus more closely. He commands us to look. Behold, he is coming with clouds, present tense, not the future. Behold, I am alive forevermore. Can we see that? Can we really see that? Behold, a throne set in heaven, one set on the throne. Can we see it? Because he's saying, look, and it's there. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and loose its 7 seals. Look, because that has happened. Behold, the tabernacle of David is with men, and he will dwell with men, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. Here's a question. Where else is that picture in the Bible? You can answer this time. Where else is that picture in the Bible? So read it again. Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. Any takers? And they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. Genesis goes right back to the beginning. See, that's how it all started, with God walking with his people, dwelling with them. And that's how it ends. Right back to the beginning. God's plan hasn't changed. All that he's doing is going to get us back to that. I'm not looking forward to going to heaven, because we're going to spend eternity with God, walking with God once again. So, maybe after reading the book, we might conclude that Revelation is about the present, maybe more than we think. If that is the case, if it is about present realities, then we can start to think about how then does that book speak into the life of the church? How does that book speak into the beast of the world? How does that book speak into our worship of God? And how does that speak into our future hope? I didn't go up to Leeds on my own. Do you want to come up? You're going to give Jill, Jim, and Sam just going to tell us very briefly what was their highlight of the day. Jill's got a notepad. Yeah.
You just want the highlight though of the day. Seeing Alicia for lunch. Which is an unexpected blessing of the Lord. No, I think I've always been a person who read, out of Revelation, I suppose the things that I read were the letters, and the things that really scared me was the letter to the Laodiceans about being lukewarm. But studying it, finding out that you've got to look at the context of those real people that it was being spoken to, what was happening at the time. And also throughout those letters, Jesus was giving, out of his kindness, instructions of what to do, so you didn't come to harm when those things start to unfold. So I think for me, and something which Dave and I had come across before this day as well, is that strangely Revelation is a pastoral book. It is a book in Jesus showing the way that we have to be ready for the coming things. It also kind of helped me to understand some things. You know, we often sing about Jesus being worthy. Well, what was he worthy of? He was the only one. And John wept when they said there's no one worthy to open the scroll. But Jesus was worthy. The scroll has got that end-time plan, the plan for our redemption. That's what the scroll is. And also another thing, well, we talk about the Lion of the tribe of Judah so often, but in Revelation 5 it says, look, he is look at the Lion of the tribe of Judah, but who the Lion of the tribe of Judah is the Lamb, looking as if he was slain, with 7 horns, which complete power, 7 eyes, complete knowledge, and 7 spirits, the complete Spirit of God. So although we talk about that lion who prowls and roars, it's all in Jesus' sacrifice that battle has been won.
Yeah, I think the day was a real affirmation to me of I think Revelation as a book of the Bible, like the whole Bible, as a word of God, is an invitation to intimacy with God. And when we come across something that puzzles us, we can drop it and step away because we're confused. But that invitation to intimacy is the Bible saying, search me, know my ways. And the way you search the Bible is you ask those simple questions like we talked about. Why was that letter written? Where are those things that it's talking about coming up elsewhere in the Bible, like the Old Testament? Revelation seems strange to us because it's the only book in the New Testament that's of a different genre to the rest of the New Testament. But if we go back to Daniel, to Ezekiel, to all these other books, all of a sudden it feels like familiar ground. So it was a real affirmation of the approach that you can just read the Bible, follow those trails to see those connections and build that meaning and that intimacy with God. And by doing that, you don't need all these complicated theological arguments and things to make sense of the text, because the Bible then speaks for itself. All the answers are in it, really, that we need to know. So yeah, it was a real affirmation in that way for me.
Thanks, Sam. Jim.
My thoughts on it are really that when you first come across Revelations, it's a problem because of the visual things that are put in front of you. When they're explained, you end up with a story or something that's there, that's going to happen, that's there for you all. You start off with a war in heaven. You then go on to a war on earth, but you end up with a wedding. And the wedding is between Jesus and us. And I think that's the main thing.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. I like that. You start with a war and end in a wedding. That's good. That's good. Okay. So thank you. Yeah. It's as Sam mentioned. You can. We did the whole day without dipping into a load of commentaries, because that's my first port of call. Oh, I wonder what so and so says about this. And then Neil will pick up another commentary, and John will pick up another commentary, and we're all then following arguments based on what someone else has said anyway. So it's a brilliant book to talk about and just discuss and throw around, because the chances are none of them have got it completely right anyway. But as Sam said, it's about God's invitation to say, yeah, what am I saying to you at this time?